Now, today we'll be talking about funding your film through US-based incentives. This event is presented by Wrapbook Payroll, the industry's only on-demand payroll and production accounting platform. With Wrapbook Payroll, productions can pay their crew with a click and generate cost reports all in real time, all without waiting for a paymaster. So it is my great pleasure to tell you a little bit about our guest today. Ryan Broussard is Wrapbook's VP of Sales and Production Incentives and has worked with productions of all sizes to help them optimize their production incentive strategies and make the most out of their budgets. He has worked on production incentives from nearly every possible angle. As well as a well-regarded industry expert, Ryan has hosted numerous online tutorials, webinars, and educational videos, and he has also served as both guest and host on numerous panels. So, Ryan, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to start off with
Great to
some
be here.
questions. Hey,
Sorry. Came in late. I think it was the bright colors of my background on my shirt.
it went,
Uh, Super happy to be here. I love talking to groups like this and doing webinars. Education is key with these things, and just being in the know. So happy to do that. Working with new filmmakers, older filmmakers as well. So let's not outcast those as well. So all around, incentives are constantly changing, and looking forward to talking today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for everything. And just as a reminder, feel free to submit any questions that you might have for Ryan and using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. But first, I have a few questions of my own. So we're going to start we're going to start off the discussion with that. Yeah, so let's just go dive right into it. What is a production incentive? Please tell me.
Sure. We're going to start there. So this will be great for everybody. A production incentive, they started in the US about 20 some odd years ago, maybe even longer at this point. I start to lose track. The years go by very quickly. I've been doing this for about 16, 17 years, and they were just starting right before I started in this. And basically what they were states, they were creating a benefit of some type, financial, of course, to productions that filmed basically outside of California, basically trying to create a new industry in a state where production was not a popular industry or one being used at all. So they would say, hey, if you stepped out of the pocket of California and filmed, the first places to do this in the US were like Louisiana, Georgia, and New Mexico. They were the first main three. So if you filmed there, you would get a financial benefit to filming there, which would then, I always say having an incentive is like an economic bomb to an area, because you're dropping in crews, and they have per diems, and they're staying at hotels, and they're eating at restaurants, and they're buying locally and all that good stuff. And yeah, so that's why states do it, is to have that economic bomb and have that influx of an industry. And then, of course, productions do it to save money and to skim off that money from their budgets. They did originally start Canada. It did have them first outside of the US. So a lot of times people say, well, it kind of deterred from California, but California was losing a lot of it to Canada. And that's kind of where the idea came, where US jurisdictions started saying, let's do it too. Let's start diversifying where people shoot, and incentivizing them for coming here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the Canada boom. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still big. I mean, people still obviously film there and all their jurisdictions there. But US now, I mean, you're talking about the majority of states now have it. They see that it works in other states. And they all kind of want that hit show to come to their state and hopefully get multiple seasons, or get really good appeal and just visual awareness of the state. Sometimes people film in a state, and the state is just a character of the project in the background there, and it showcases the state in a good light. So it's promotion all around for the states.
Great. So could you tell us a little bit about the different types of incentives you see in the US and how they differ?
Sure, sure. So it really boils down to two buckets, and then the second bucket we'll talk about has some nuances to it. So there's grants and rebates, and that is one side of it. And those are going to be primarily, as I describe it, a bucket of cash. This is where a state or jurisdiction gets a certain amount of money for the year. It doesn't require anything to do with tax filing, anything whatsoever. It's, hey, you do X, Y, and Z in the state, you meet minimum criteria, and if we have the money left in our pot, we will give you back X amount of dollars. That's typically how those work, is grants and rebates. Then the other side of that equation are tax credits, and there are a variety of those. So there's fully refundable tax credits, which somebody like New Mexico, it's very popular. That is basically where you do, just like with the grants, you hit your markers. So you do the minimum criteria that the state requires, whatever that might be, and that's gonna be different in every state. But you hit those markers, and then you eventually file a tax return in that state because it's a tax credit, right? You file that, and then they will offset your liability in the state, which, to be honest, usually you don't have a building or full-time employees and all that good stuff in that state you're shooting in, so you don't have liability. So then that's why it's called fully refundable. You get a dollar for dollar return from the Department of Revenue / film office at the state level after you filed your tax return. So they want you to file it. They basically say you're getting back, $1 million in tax credit. Do you have any liability in the state? They look at their taxes. They say no. Then they give you $1 million back. Then there's transferable tax credits, which is similar, except when you get your credit, think of everything I just talked about with refundable. When you get your credit, the state doesn't give you a check. That will never happen with a fully transferable state. What happens is you're kind of stuck with that tax credit, but it's transferable. So that's the key. And what you need to do is you need to transfer it to a company that has that liability in the state, right? This is like the credit in Georgia. And, Georgia has a lot of large companies there, Home Depot and Chick-fil-A and Coke, they're all based there. And so when you have amount of large companies like that, they have a big need for these tax credits. And that's why that program has been so successful, is because they will buy those tax credits from the productions. So the production gets a tax credit. It's not money yet. They have to go sell it on the open market. Now that's key because there's a discount involved with transferable. What are you going to sell it for? It's whatever the market demands, right? It's not going to be dollar for dollar. So you got to be careful when you're budgeting. So you might say, I'm going to Georgia. I think I'm getting back $1 million, but it's actually $1 million in tax credits. So what are you going to sell that for on the open market? It could be a 10% discount because a large company will say, okay, I'm going to buy that credit from you, but I'm going to buy it at 90 cents on the dollar. Because why would they ever buy it from you at dollar for dollar? Doesn't make sense. So it's like a Groupon. Is that still a thing? Where it's like, you say, oh, I'm going to like this restaurant. I bought this Groupon for $40 worth of food, but I paid 20 for it. So they're paying you 90 cents on the dollar so they're paying you $900,000 in cash. So you get the cash and then they profit because now they're getting $1 million in credits to offset their credit in the state of, for example, Georgia. Those are the two big ones. There are some ones that are in between like that with tax credits. There's partially refundable, which is like Louisiana, where the state does issue a check, but there's a discount built in. So you don't sell it. It's similar to fully refundable, but it's partially refundable. They give you a portion of it back. So the discount's already built in. And then there's non-refundable, non-transferable tax credit. And I promise this is the last one. Non-transferable, non-refundable. And that's where you are technically stuck with it. You can't sell it. The state won't give you a check for it. All you can use it for is liability. So you can only use it to offset your own liability in the state. You can't sell it to someone else that has liability in the state. This is successful in California with the studios, right? So for the studios, they have a non-transferable, non-refundable because they have liability in California. So it's a win-win for them. It may not work as well, and it doesn't work as well in other states. So
Mhm.
that's the long-winded answer and the breakdown of the types of credits there are.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. That was very, very helpful.
I
Um,
hope so. It's a mouthful for sure.
well, we're going to get more into it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, so I know you mentioned different criteria. Are there different rules for different formats of what you're shooting? Like there's like feature fiction versus feature documentary or episodic?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer to that, and it's not the one anyone's going to like on this call, is every state is like a snowflake. Everyone is extremely unique and very different with their rules and regulations with regards to the type of programming and even the types of programming they allow into the to their program. So some states might say, well, we don't do any unscripted type of stuff, like California says that, and New York says that. And then some states will say, well, we do allow for that, but they might be held at different minimum criteria. So yeah, New Jersey just changed theirs. Actually, they made it easier for unscripted to qualify, but it's still not the easiest. But it's a different criteria than if you were a scripted feature or television show. It's a little harder for the unscripted. But that's not always the case. Once again, every state's very different. So sometimes they'll diversify it by like, are you under, like Illinois does it by, are you under 30 minutes? Are you over 30 minutes? Your minimum criteria will change. Some states will just say, hey, like Louisiana just says, hey, it's as long as you spend 300,000 in the state, we're good. Georgia's the same way. Hey, as long as you spend 500,000 in the state, we're good. We don't care what kind of what other criteria you're hitting, if you're a commercial or if you're a doc. They might have certain rules in those states. The one that I see the most kind of called out that doesn't qualify is typically like news programs and sporting events, like an actual football game or something to that effect. You don't see that typically. You can assume that those don't qualify. But once again, every state kind of has its different spectrum of what they let into the program.
So what are some factors that producers should consider when finding the right match for their project, as far as like where to shoot, like what state to shoot in?
Yeah, great question. It's something actually that comes across my desk quite frequently when clients of Wrapbook or even prospects of Wrapbook that I'm talking to. I let them know, hey, I'll look at your budgets, and if they're undecided on where to film, I'll help them decide where to go and navigate that incentive program should they choose to go down that path. So it is something that comes up quite frequently with my day to day. The biggest things to be aware of when going to a particular state is it depends on the type of program you have and the type of program, the incentive program that that state has. So one of the things I always ask is, are you scripted or unscripted? So we kind of talked about that. So if you're unscripted, if you're a doc, if you're a game show, for example, like Nevada does game shows, now Illinois does game shows. They didn't used to last year. That's a new change. You heard it here first. So it's like, there's these things constantly change and you kind of have to know how to navigate them. So it's hard to answer that question directly, but I would just say the biggest ones is what type of programming are you? So how do you define yourself? Are you above the line heavy? And what I mean by that is a lot of these states will have what's called like a compensation cap where they say, look, the most we'll give you back on a highly paid individual or loan out, actor, director is, X. It might be 1 million. Like, I think, North Carolina's is 1 million and Louisiana's is 3 million. And then like Georgia, they have a rule on it, but if you're a loan out, it doesn't apply. But these compensation caps can come into effect. So if you're a $20 million show, but you have Robert Downey Jr. or somebody of that capacity on your independent, and he's getting paid like half the budget, that could be problematic, and you would not get as much from the incentive in particular jurisdictions because of these compensation caps. And most states do have them. Some don't, but a lot of them do. And then I think the other thing would be, does the program have money left? These programs are not open-ended. Some of them are. Connecticut is uncapped. Georgia is uncapped. Illinois, These are uncapped programs, but most of them, especially the grants and the rebates, because I mentioned there, this pot of cash, have a limited amount of funds for each year or each section of years, like Texas is biannual, and you are held upon that. So it's best if you contemplate, oh, I might go to this state versus that state, call up that film office or reach out to me. I'll introduce you to the film office and let's find out, do they have money left? Do you actually have money left to give me? Am I wasting my time budgeting for a place that doesn't have any place left? So those are the biggest things is the caps, because there's also project caps. So like they might say, oh, well, the most we'll give you back is this, you know? And if you're $100 million show and a feature and you're going to North Carolina and they say, well, the most we'll give you back is 7 million. Well, you might be able to get a lot more at a place that doesn't have a project cap like that. So all things to be considered, the caps, the type of project you are, and then the funding of the program.